Hey listeners, tonight we're rewinding to 1520's Florentino Doppler radar. No chirpy weather apps, just you squinting at clouds while praying your expensive silk hose won't get ruined by surprise spring rain. Imagine planning an outdoor wedding using goat entrails and star charts. Honestly, you'd likely end up divorced before the reception. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your city and current time to-lets. See if Renaissance methods beat your weather app tonight. Now, turn off your phone screen, turn down the volume, listen to my storytelling, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your velvet slippers sink into damp terracotta tiles as you climb onto the roof of your palazzo. Below, the Arno River swirls like liquid obsidian under a moon so sharply defined it seems etched onto the sky. That expensive new Flemish tapestry hangs in your sala below one downpour, seeping through these old roof joints, could ruin it. Time to consult Antonio, your astrologer on retainer, who's already tracing constellations with a trembling, ink-stained finger. Observe, Mars lingers in the house of Aquarius, he declares, his breath fogging in the cool air. You squint. To you it looks like someone spilled salt across black velvet. This signifies turbulence, atmospheric unrest. He means thunderstorms. For an extra silver grosso, he'll throw in a prediction about your dodgy merchant investments. Renaissance multitasking. This celestial obsession isn't Antonio's personal quirk. Every educated person in Florence lives by Claudius Ptolemy's Tetrabiblos, a 300-year-old astrological Bible claiming planets tug at Earth's weather like puppeteers. The moon governs moisture, farmers plant peas at its waxing phase, fishermen avoid full moons when lunatic tides might swamp boats, and your neighbor postponed his daughter's wedding because Saturn was squinting at Venus. Even Leonardo da Vinci filled notebooks with cloud studies, muttering about measurable winds, though most people thought he was just avoiding painting commissions. The mainstream belief? Weather is celestial drama, written in light. Your job is decoding it. But you've got backup plans beyond Antonio's star charts. You're scrutinizing the moon's horns, not actual horns, but those faint luminous rings circling it tonight. Your cook, Giovanna, swears a thick, hazy halo means rain within 3 days. Like God's own soup bowl, she'd say, stirring the minestrone. A thin ring? Sun so fierce it'll crack the olives on the tree. Tonight's halo is disturbingly luminous, a cosmic donut promising a soaking. Bad news for the lemon trees in your courtyard. Now, the truly bizarre stuff. While Antonio frets over Mars, Venetian sailors are watching seagulls. Not for navigation, but for vomiting. If a gull regurgitates mid-flight, a storm is clawing over the horizon. Tuscan winemakers? They bury donkey skulls under new vineyards, snouts pointing north, to suck the anger from storm clouds. Modern archaeologists found a dozen near Siena in 2008. True story. Across the Alps, German farmers interpret pig squeals. High-pitched screams mean cold snaps. And don't get Florentines started on crickets. If they chirp louder than usual after sunset, guaranteed humidity, claims the grumpy bookseller near Ponte Vecchio. They're gossiping about the damp. Historians still battle fiercely over one question. Did educated Renaissance folks truly believe astrology predicted weather, or was it just sophisticated gambling? Some, like scholar Marsilio Ficino, wrote panicked letters when forecasts failed, genuinely puzzled. Merchants' ledgers show payments to astrologers, listed alongside wool shipments and taxes, a legitimate business expense. But others? Absolute charlatans. Take Lorenzo the Starry-Eyed, who sold hurricane-proof amulets near Milan's cathedral. His business dried up, literally, after he got caught in a sudden downpour without his own guaranteed dry talisman, karma, Renaissance style. A cold droplet splatters onto your nose, then another. Antonio frantically flips parchments. Impossible! Venus is ascendant. The moisture should be contained. More drops fall, fat and cold. From the street below, a shout. Hey, Siako! Your cat's washing behind its ears, going to swim before supper. It's old Bruno the baker, pointing at your ginger Tom, Luigi, performing an obsessive ear-cleaning ritual on your windowsill. Folk wisdom screams, frantic cat grooming equals imminent deluge. Antonio scoffs, shielding his precious charts. Superstitious drivel. Luigi pauses, licks a paw, and stares directly at the astrologer. As you rush down to rescue the Flemish tapestry, you make a mental note. Tomorrow, you're watching the cat. The stars, it seems, are spectacularly bad tattletales. The damp chill seeps into your bones now, a tangible promise of the downpour thickening the air. Below, market awnings begin to snap like sails as vendors scramble. Somewhere, a donkey brays. Or is it protesting its buried cousin's fate? You pull your cloak tighter, the scent of wet stone and distant rosemary rising from unseen gardens. Antonio's muffled curses fade behind you, replaced by the rhythmic plink-plink-plink accelerating on copper gutters. Time to retreat. Tomorrow brings new mysteries, perhaps whispered not by planets, but by chickens. Rain drums a relentless rhythm on your palazzo's leaded windows the next morning. Velvet slippers, swapped for thick-soled boots squelching through the muddy courtyard. Antonio, the astrologer, is suspiciously indisposed. Red, hiding from your wrath. But the world doesn't stop for wet socks or dodgy star readers. Your merchant cousin needs goods moved before roads dissolve into soup, and the fate of his silk shipment rests on one burning question. Will tomorrow dawn clear? Time to consult nature's own meteorologists. Forget the stars. You're heading for the chicken coop. You crouch beside a fussy brood of Gallina di Livorno hens, their feathers puffed against the damp chill. Giovanna the cook is already there, arms crossed, critically observing a speckled hen named Beatrice, vigorously scratching and flapping in a patch of dry dirt under the eaves. Echo! Giovanna nods knowingly. Sand bath means dry air's coming. Sicaro. You raise an eyebrow. Yesterday, Luigi the cat predicted rain by washing his ears. Today, Beatrice forecasts sunshine by taking a dust bath. Renaissance forecasting feels suspiciously like interpreting Rorschach blots made by livestock. Welcome to Europe's living, breathing, squawking weather network. While scholars debated celestial mechanics, everyday survival depended on reading animal behavior with the intensity of a spy deciphering enemy codes. This was mainstream wisdom, codified in wildly popular texts like the Bauernpraktik, the Farmer's Practice, reprinted across Germany, France, and Italy. Forget Ptolemy. Farmers swore, by Chapter 7, of beasts and their foreknowing of tempests, cows lying down in fields, sign of rain, they sought dry ground, bees clustering tightly around the hive, storm approaching, instinct to protect the queen, spiders spinning webs with unusual zeal, fair weather ahead, optimal flying conditions for prey. The land itself was a vast, chattering oracle. But the real strangeness lies beyond the barnyard. Down by the Arno's swollen banks, you find old Silvio, a fisherman whose face resembles a dried apple. He's not watching the sky. He's peering intently into a large glass jar half filled with murky river water. Inside, a thick gray eel writhes slowly. See how lazy he is? Silvio rasps, tapping the glass. Just drifting. Good sign. Means calm. You lean closer. And if he's energetic? Silvio shudders. Thrashing? Trying to climb the glass? Madonna Santa. Batten down the hatches. A real borrasca is coming. The theory? Eels could sense minute changes in atmospheric pressure through their skin, reacting before humans felt a thing. Venetian galley captains reportedly kept similar eel jars on deck. You make a mental note. Never mock a fisherman's pet eel. The contradictions, however, could be maddening. While Florentines believed crickets chirping louder signaled rising humidity, Giovanna, they're complaining about sticky wings. Farmers in Burgundy interpreted the exact same sound as a sure sign of coming dry heat. In England, swallows flying high meant fair weather. In Tuscany, low-flying swallows signaled the same thing. Was a crow's harsh call a rain warning or a sunny affirmation? It depended entirely on whether you stood in a Yorkshire dale or an Umbrian olive grove. Local folklore painted wildly different pictures onto the same animal behaviors. Scholars are still untangling this messy web. Dr. Eleanor Rossi's groundbreaking study of 16th century farmers' diaries reveals fascinating patterns. People did notice genuine correlations, like ants building higher mounds before heavy rain. True, they avoid flooding. But confirmation bias ran rampant. If Beatrice the hen took a dust bath and the sun did shine, proof. If it rained anyway. Ah, well, she only did a short bath, Signor, I forgot to mention. The eel in the jar likely was reacting to pressure changes. Eels are sensitive, but linking its thrashing directly to a specific storm's intensity, that was hopeful interpretation layered over a kernel of biological truth. Suddenly, a strangled squawk shatters the relative quiet. A young rooster, perhaps overeager or just tone-deaf, lets out a hoarse, off-key crow in the middle of the afternoon. Giovanna gasps, crossing herself. Malocchio! The evil eye! Bad luck! Terrible storms! Old Silvio, the fisherman, scowls. Nonsense. My grandpapa always said an afternoon crow means, a visitor is coming. Or maybe good fishing tomorrow? He scratches his head, clearly confused. Beatrice, the hen, oblivious, continues her dusty ablutions. The rooster crows again, sounding even more like a rusty hinge. You sigh, the damp chill from your cloak finally seeping into your shoulders, a low ache settling into the joints. Giovanna sees you wince. Ah, Leosa. Your bones, signor? They know better than stars or chickens when the air gets heavy, see? She nods sagely. Maybe Antonio's stars failed. Maybe Beatrice's dust bath and Silvio's lazy eel contradict each other. But this persistent throb in your knee, flaring up just as the barometer seems to plummet, that feels unnervingly, personally precise. The rooster's jarring cry fades, replaced by the insistent drip-drip from the lemon trees. Time to seek a different kind of oracle, one that lives inside your own aching body. The air feels thick enough to slice, promising more than just rain. The persistent ache in your right knee isn't just a souvenir from that ill-advised horseback race last summer. It's throbbing with a dull insistence today, a deep, bone-deep pulse that seems synchronized with the heavy drumming of rain on the clinic's shuttered windows. You're not here for Antonio's star charts or Beatrice's dusty predictions. You've come to see Maestro Vico, the stooped physician whose apothecary smells like a forest floor after a storm, damp earth, crushed herbs, and something vaguely metallic. Ah, il dolor, he exclaims before you even speak, peering at you through thick spectacles perched precariously on his nose. The humors speak! The south wind stirs the phlegm, you see. Congestion. Aches. Tell me, signore, is your urine paler than usual this morning? Welcome to the most intimate weather station you'll ever visit, your own body. In Renaissance Europe, your physical sensations weren't just symptoms. They were vital meteorological data. This belief wasn't fringe superstition. It was mainstream medical doctrine, rooted firmly in the ancient teachings of Hippocrates and Galen, still dominating universities from Padua to Oxford. The theory? 4 bodily fluids: blood, phlegm, black bile, yellow bile, governed health, and reacted violently to atmospheric shifts. A sudden warm spell could heat the blood, causing feverish restlessness. A creeping dampness like today's thickened phlegm, leading to congestion, rheumatic pains, and that infuriating ache in your dodgy knee. Maestro Vico pokes your swollen joint gently. See? The joint weeps fluid, mirroring the weeping sky. Nature echoes within the microcosm of man. He prescribes leeches applied near the knee to balance the sanguineous excess aggravated by humidity, and a foul-smelling poultice of mustard seed and ground willow bark. You try not to gag. Your body, it seems, is a walking, complaining barometer. But the body-weather connection goes far beyond rheumatism. Maestro Vico checks your hair next. Static? See? He rubs a dry cloth vigorously over your scalp, then holds a feather near your temple. It twitches, drawn towards the faint crackle. Aha! Electric tension. Sign of dry air coming. Perhaps tomorrow, or maybe thunder. He beams. Across town, barbers doubled as amateur forecasters. Customers complaining of itchy scalps or unruly flyaway hair were noted as signs of impending atmospheric change. Scars tightening, old wounds itching. These weren't mere annoyances. They were urgent bulletins from your personal climate network. Even your dreams could be interpreted. Vivid, chaotic dreams supposedly signaled stormy disturbances in the air, affecting the brain's delicate spirits. Falling asleep felt like submitting a nightly weather report. Now, for the truly macabre twist. While you wince as the leech finds purchase, Maestro Vico mentions a method used by sailors in Genoa, the mano del impiccato, the hanged man's hand. Ghastly business? He mutters, grinding dried beetles in a mortar. They'd acquire, well, a hand. From a recently hanged criminal, preferably one who died violently. They'd mount it, fingers outstretched, on a pivot. The theory? The dead hand, still charged with the vital winds extinguished violently at death, would miraculously point towards the source of the next approaching wind. A north wind? The stiff finger swings north. A southerly gale? It points south. Utter nonsense, of course, Vico declares, pouring hot wax onto your poultice. The true wind vein is within. You shift uncomfortably, the leech pulsing, hoping he doesn't ask for a contribution to his specimen collection. Historians are deeply divided on how seriously even educated people took these bodily omens. Diaries of merchants and nobles are filled with notes like, "My old sword wound pained me greatly today. Heavy rains followed," or "Felt unusually melancholic. The air grew thick and oppressive." Did they truly see cause and effect? Or was it sophisticated pattern recognition mixed with coincidence? Dr. Giovanni Moretti's analysis of 16th century medical texts reveals physicians did meticulously record patients' complaints alongside weather conditions, searching for correlations. Was it genuine belief in the microcosm-macrocosm link, or simply the best framework they had for understanding the undeniable feeling of atmospheric pressure on the body? The line blurred constantly. Some scholars argue it was a deeply ingrained sensory literacy, lost in our instrument-reliant age. Others see it as desperate anthropomorphism. As you limp out of Maestro Vico's den, the leech mercifully removed, but the poultice itching fiercely under your hose, you pass the bustling Mercato Vecchio. The air is thick with the scent of wet wool, overripe cheese, and the tang of metal from the coppersmith's stall. You spot Signora Bianchi, the formidable widow who sells medicinal herbs. She's holding up a thick, twisted root to a customer. "La radice della tempesta! Storm root!" she barks. Feel how dry it is? Cracked. Means no rain for weeks. Buy now before the damp ruins it. You pause. Your knee still throbs dully, a counterpoint to her confident sales pitch. Maestro Vico's internal barometer predicts lingering damp. Signora Bianchi's dried root promises drought. Whose instrument is more reliable? The ache deepens, a low thrum against bone. You crave something tangible, something you can see and touch beyond your own unreliable flesh. Maybe the answers aren't written in the stars, whispered by chickens, or throbbing in your joints. Maybe they're sitting right on your kitchen shelf, next to the salt and the slightly suspicious sausage. The scent of damp stone and wood smoke hangs heavy as you turn for home, the promise or threat held in the very air you breathe, settling into the marrow. Time to consult the alchemists of the pantry. The lingering scent of Maestro Vico's mustard poultice clings to your clothes like a persistent ghost as you push open the heavy oak door to your cucina. Forget celestial charts and twitchy eels. The air here is thick with basil, wood smoke, and the sharp tang of vinegar. Giovanna is already scowling at a plump onion on the scarred wooden table. Right then, she declares, grabbing a wicked-looking knife. Let's ask the Cipolla what tomorrow brings. Your knee throbs in agreement. If your body is a weather vane, perhaps your pantry holds the barometer. Welcome to the bustling, chaotic laboratory of domestic forecasting. While scholars argued and physicians bled, ordinary Renaissance folks turned their kitchens into weather stations, employing methods passed down through generations with the solemnity of alchemical rituals. This wasn't just peasant superstition. It was mainstream household management. Your shelves likely hold a lunario, a cheap, mass-printed almanac bought from a street hawker, its pages crammed with astrological tables and practical tips like, when salt sweats in the cellar, prepare for weeping skies. Or, if the hearth fire spits more than cooks, winds quarrel overhead. Everyone from silk merchants to stable boys consulted these grubby booklets. Predicting rain was as essential as knowing how to darn a sock. Giovanna slices the onion with practiced efficiency, dividing it into 12 neat wedges, one for each month of the year. She meticulously sprinkles each segment with a generous pinch of coarse sea salt. Now, she instructs, wiping her hands on her apron, we let Signora Cipolla sleep. By dawn, she'll tell us. The theory? The segment whose salt dissolved the most overnight indicated the wettest month ahead. A January wedge swimming in brine meant a soggy start to the year. You watch the salt crystals glisten, wondering if an onion really understands hydrological cycles better than Antonio's star charts. It certainly smells more honest. But the kitchen's magic extends beyond vegetables. Giovanna points to the large earthenware jug of olive oil near the fireplace. See the bubbles? Tiny ones, rising slow? Means pressure's building. Could be storms. She taps a barrel of wine aging in the corner. If the bung feels tighter than usual, air's squeezing it. Change is coming. Even the behavior of milk souring, bread rising sluggishly, or candles guttering abnormally were read as atmospheric memos. Your home wasn't just shelter. It was a complex instrument panel humming with data. Then comes the knock. A slick-haired man, in a slightly too fine and slightly too damp cloak, stands at your service entrance, clutching a velvet pouch. Good signore, he booms, flashing teeth like uneven pearls. Salvatore della Luna, at your service, I bring salvation from the heaven's wrath. With a flourish, he pulls out a smooth, grayish stone veined with white. Behold, the Pietra della Tempesta, the storm stone, harvested, he lowers his voice dramatically, from the highest peak of the Apennines, where lightning kisses the earth. He claims the stone absorbs storm energy. Place it on your windowsill, and tempests veer away. Guaranteed. Or your silver returned. He winks. The price? Exorbitant. The stone? Looks suspiciously like a common piece of river-polished limestone. This is where domestic wisdom collides headlong with Renaissance hustle. Charlatans like Salvatore thrived, peddling weatherproof charms, amulets, and dubious relics to a population desperate for certainty. Apothecaries sold sun essences, likely distilled rainwater with saffron for color, and wind-calming powders, probably ground chalk. Cunning men offered to bind storms, using elaborate and expensive rituals involving wax dolls and incantations. The Lunari themselves often contained fantastical advertisements for infallible forecasting talismans. It was a golden age for meteorological snake oil. The critical question historians wrestle with is, how many people knew it was snake oil? Diaries and court records reveal fascinating layers. Some, like a wealthy widow in Siena, genuinely believed her expensive, thunder-repelling coral charm worked, citing the lack of strikes near her house, ignoring the one that hit the bell tower 3 streets over. Others, like savvy merchants, might buy a cheap storm stone not out of belief, but to appease a superstitious wife or nervous ship captain expecting a talisman aboard. And then there were the outright cynical, like the Florentine gambler who bought rain-inducing toad bones purely to win bets on when the next downpour would halt the palio horse race. Belief, pragmatism, and opportunism swirled together like ingredients in Giovanna's minestrone. You politely decline Salvatore's miraculous stone, perhaps next month when Mars is kinder. He shrugs, pockets his velvet bag, and heads off into the drizzle, doubtless towards the next hopeful household. Turning back to the kitchen, you see Giovanna peering intently into a shallow bowl of water where she's floated a fresh egg white. "Look," she murmurs, tendrils spreading, thin ones, means gentle winds, or maybe just a fresh egg. She frowns, uncertain. Just then, your neighbor, the perpetually flustered cloth merchant Marco, bursts in, shaking rain from his cloak. "Have you seen it?" he gasps, eyes wide. "Over the Duomo! A sundog! A parhelion! Like 2 phantom suns beside the real one!" He describes the atmospheric halo phenomenon. Old Paolo, the shepherd, says it means 3 days of frost. Or was it plague? Madonna, I forget. He looks genuinely terrified. Giovanna scoffs, poking her salted onion. "Shepherds, what do they know? Ask the onion." Dawn arrives, gray and damp. You hurry to the kitchen table. Giovanna lifts the cloth covering the onion. The salt on the December wedge is completely dissolved, pooling in the onion's curve. The July wedge? Barely touched. "Ha!" Giovanna proclaims. "Wet Yuletide, dry summer, la cipolla non mente, the onion doesn't lie." You stare at the weeping vegetable chorus. Outside, the rain continues its steady patter. Your knee still murmurs of damp. Marco's phantom suns have vanished. Salvatore's stone is probably already gracing someone else's sill. The sheer volume of conflicting signals, celestial, animal, bodily, domestic, fraudulent, is overwhelming. You crave something clearer, something less dependent on chicken behavior, aching joints, or the interpretive tears of an allium. A faint memory stirs, a rumor from Pisa, of a scholar tinkering with glass tubes and strange liquids, something about measuring the weight of the air itself. The scent of damp wool and wood smoke mingles with the pungent onion. Maybe the answer isn't in the sky, the coop, the body, or the kitchen. Maybe it's in the quiet persistence of an idea taking shape, measured not by omens, but by mercury. The air feels charged, but not just with rain. The scent of Giovanna's prophetic onion still hangs in the damp air of your palazzo, a pungent counterpoint to the metallic tang of rain on stone outside. Your knee throbs its familiar damp weather rhythm, a bodily echo of the low gray sky pressing down on Florence. Antonio mutters apologies near the fire, star charts looking suspiciously singed at the edges. Giovanna eyes her salt-dissolved December onion wedge with grim satisfaction. Marco, the cloth merchant, bursts in again, this time waving a small, grubby pouch. "Unicorn horn powder, guaranteed to deflect lightning. Cost me 3 scuddy." He looks desperate. You need answers clearer than charlatans' promises, clearer than the tears of a root vegetable. A memory surfaces. A letter from your cousin in Pisa, scribbled excitement about a student of the notorious Galileo Galilei and his glass that weighs the wind. Time to brave the muddy roads south. Your journey to Pisa feels less like travel and more like wading through lukewarm broth. Rain slicks the cobbles, turning the road into a treacherous mirror reflecting the leaden sky. Outside the city gates, the famed Leaning Tower seems to list even more dramatically under the weight of the clouds. You find the workshop tucked in a narrow lane smelling of damp wool and hot metal. Inside, Benedetto, a young man with ink-stained fingers and eyes bright with fierce curiosity, is hunched over a long, slender glass tube sealed at one end. It's partially filled with a dark liquid, wine, he explains, and inverted into a bowl of the same. A small bubble of air is trapped at the sealed top. "Observe," Benedetto urges, his voice tight with excitement. He points to the liquid creeping up the tube. "Signor Galileo calls it a thermoscopio, a heat measurer. But look," he gestures outside at the oppressive gloom. "See how the liquid climbs higher today than yesterday, when the sun shone? The air, it presses less when storms gather. It's the weight of the air itself changing. This is the quiet revolution brewing. Forget gods whispering in stars or cats washing ears." Benedetto speaks of atmospheric pressure. Galileo himself had noted that suction pumps couldn't lift water beyond a certain height, suggesting air had weight that could be overcome. His student, Torricelli, would soon replace Benedetto's wine with mercury and create the first true barometer. The mainstream knowledge here isn't flawless prediction yet. Benedetto admits his thermoscopio is temperamental, affected by heat drafts and clumsy handling. But the idea is seismic. Weather isn't celestial whim or animal intuition, it's physics. It's measurable. You stare at the dark liquid inching up the glass. It feels like peering into the future. But step outside Benedetto's workshop, and the present crashes back in. The Piazza dei Miracoli is thick with pilgrims and hawkers. One stall overflows with storm-repelling amulets, dried bats' wings, polished stones, Salvatore would approve, and yes, small vials of dubious unicorn powder, likely ground narwhal tusk or bleached bone. A street preacher thunders near the baptistery, "Repent! These unnatural devices invite God's wrath. Only prayer and the bells can save us." He's referencing the bizarrely specific cold knowledge you'd heard whispers of. In 1584, Venice passed a law requiring church bells to be rung during thunderstorms. The theory? The sacred sound waves physically shattered the storm clouds. Similar decrees existed in France and Germany. Imagine the cacophony, a city's worth of bells clanging against the thunder, fueled by desperate faith. Did anyone track the success rate? Or did confirmation bias credit every storm that passed with being wrung away? The critical controversy historians grapple with is blunt. In its infancy, was this emerging scientific instrumentation actually worse at practical, day-to-day forecasting than centuries of accumulated folklore? Benedetto's thermoscopio was fragile, expensive, and required interpretation. Your neighbor's cat washing its ears gave an immediate, actionable warning. The Bauernpractic Almanac offered simple rules. Red sky at night, shepherd's delight, that often held statistical weight. A 2006 study analyzing 16th century harvest records against known weather patterns found farmers relying on animal signs and proverbs often made planting decisions just as accurately as those consulting expensive astrologers, simply because their rules distilled generations of observational experience. The real advantage of the glass tube wasn't immediate accuracy, it was the promise of a universal, testable system. But that promise felt distant, fragile, drowned out by the clamor of bells and the cries of unicorn horn vendors. A sudden, vicious crack of thunder splits the sky directly overhead, so loud it vibrates in your teeth. The rain instantly intensifies, hammering the piazza stones like 1,000 drummers. Pilgrims shriek and scatter. Benedetto rushes to his doorway, eyes wide, not at the storm, but at his thermoscopio. The liquid inside has surged dramatically higher in the tube. "See! The pressure! It plummets!" he shouts over the downpour. Marco, clutching his unicorn powder pouch, looks utterly terrified. The street preacher redoubles his bell-ringing miming, face purple with zeal. You stand in the deluge, soaked to the skin. Your knee screams. The liquid climbs. The bells would be ringing if this were Venice. Luigi the cat would be frantically cleaning his ears right now. Giovanna's onion predicted a wet December, not this August fury. And Benedetto's glass tube? It tells you the pressure is falling, that the storm is here, now, something you already know by the water pouring down your neck. The downpour is a physical force, drumming on the worn cobbles of the piazza, turning the gutters into frantic, gurgling streams. The air thrums, thick with the scent of ozone, wet stone, and the faint, incongruous whiff of Marco's abandoned unicorn horn powder, dissolving into the mud. Benedetto stares, rapt, at his trembling wine column, its climb a silent, urgent hymn to the invisible weight fleeing the sky. You close your eyes for a moment, the cold rain tracing paths down your face, indistinguishable from the damp ache deep in your bones. The clamor fades, the preacher's shouts, the panicked scatter of pilgrims, even the thunder's grumble seems to soften, pushed back by the sheer, insistent rhythm of the rain. It's just water, meeting earth, meeting stone, meeting you. A vast, indifferent, beautiful process unfolding, witnessed by stargazers and eel-watchers, bone-aches and glass tubes. The future is whispering in Mercury. But tonight belongs to the ancient, soaking now. The air grows softer now, like well-worn linen settling around your shoulders. The drumming rain outside your window, it's just the world breathing, slow and deep. Those frantic chickens, that muttering astrologer, the glass tube trembling with wine, they blur at the edges, softening into the gentle haze behind your eyelids. Feel the weight of centuries of wondering lift, just a little. It wasn't about being right, not really. It was about looking up, looking down, looking within, trying to find a pattern in the beautiful, terrifying chaos of the sky. They watched the moon's horns, felt their scars tighten, buried donkey skulls and trusted cats. They were wrong, oh so often, but they looked, they tried. And somewhere in that messy, hopeful striving, the first fragile instruments took root. That ache in your knee, it's just an echo of old storms, a reminder you're part of the weather, too. Let Antonio's charred star charts fade. Let Giovanna's onion rest. Let Benedetto's glass hold its silent vigil. The pressure eases. The wind sighs through unseen trees. The world turns, damp and dark and utterly peaceful. You don't need to predict the next dawn. Just let this one softly end. The stars were always terrible tattletales anyway. Sleep wraps around you, warm and deep as a Florentine cloak. The only forecast you need is the quiet certainty of rest. The rain's rhythm is a lullaby older than Galileo, older than unicorn horns, older than the ache in human bones seeking answers in the vast, gentle dark. Let go. Let go. The air holds you now.